May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. On January 2nd, 2016, Alonso Yanes woke up. He is a young child. He's in 10th grade. He had the world in front of him. He had a life in front of him. He arrived at school at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he sat down in his class exactly where he should have been seated. It was a chemistry class. What he didn't know is that the teacher had not properly prepared for that class. What he didn't know is that there were no fire blankets in the classroom. What he didn't know is that there were no working showers in that classroom. What he didn't know is that that teacher would bring a gallon jug of methanol, which I'll tell you right now is the same as fuel, and she was going to use that instead of a small droplet with an eye droplet full of this fuel. What he couldn't have known is that the fume hoods in that classroom were not working. But what he now knows, after being in that classroom for 5 minutes, is that his life was changed. And what he now knows, having been in that classroom just for 5 minutes after 9, is that he was burned so badly that his life will never be the same. Within 10 minutes of walking into the classroom, Alonso Yanes' face was burned so badly that his ears had melted off. He was covered with thousands, in fact millions of droplets of methanol, of fuel, and it was on fire. And he tried to put the flames out, but there was no fire blanket in that classroom. There were no showers in that classroom. There was no fume hood in that classroom. Within 1 hour of that time period, 9 o'clock, Alonso Yanes was in New York hospital fighting for his life. Let me take you back just to that moment. He's in the hospital. His face has been burned. His arms have been burned. The skin is actually peeled off of his arms. And he's left in a condition where they now have to pump 38 pounds of fluid just to keep him alive. They have to pump that into his body. For Alonso Yanes, this has been a study in a nightmare, something he can never escape from. The teacher, Anna Poole, never intended for him to be injured. But she made a conscious decision to bring a gallon jug, looks like a bleach bottle, a gallon, into a classroom, and she pours it over a flame when they're doing an experiment to show the different colors of a rainbow when they light something called nitrates. You're supposed to use a droplet, a drop in each evaporation dish. She actually took a gallon jug. She started to pour it, and as she poured it, there's a concept known as flame jetting. The heat from the flames that had gone out before now gets sucked into the bottle, and it blowtorches out, spewing millions of droplets of methanol, of fuel across his body. He is burned so badly that he is unrecognizable. For Alonso Yanes, he will never, ever recover. Now, that's the beginning of the opening statement. You understand what I'm doing. I'm trying to grab onto the jurors, to grab their attention so that they have to say, what in the world is going on here? And I'm trying to work with the punitive aspect of the compensatory case, not punitive damages, not against the city, but I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to get the jurors angry at what took place. Now, I want to jump into summations for just a moment, where when we have to sum up in a case, one of the things that we have to do is we have to sometimes answer our adversary's arguments, right? We all know that. Well, my adversary happened to be an excellent lawyer, Mark Mixon. I tried a number of cases against him with the city. For some reason, I take more verdicts against the city and transit than anyone else, probably because the carriers don't let these cases go, but the city or transit will. Mark Mixon made an argument to the jurors, and the argument went like this. Members of the jury, the teacher never intended for this to happen. She was unaware of that concept of flame jetting. It would be very much like a birthday party where kids are sitting around a table and there's a birthday cake with 16 candles on it, Alonso being 16 years old. And one of the kids blows the candle, and sure enough, a flame catches and a kid gets lit on fire. No harm there, no intent there. That's not what this case is about. She didn't know. Hold on a second. That's the city's argument. Think about this for just a minute. Is that a fair argument? Is it right? Is it a reasonable argument? We, as plaintiffs' lawyers, have the opportunity to answer the arguments if we want, and that's the way this summation started. I always plan on doing something else, but when I listen closely and I hear what my adversary is saying, I change it all around. I don't like to use notes. I never like to use notes when I speak. I want to speak right to you. I want to look at you. I want to make sure you're paying attention to what it is that I'm saying. Members of the jury, Mr. Mixon, who was an excellent lawyer, just stood up here and told you this was like a birthday party with a birthday cake on a table with 16 candles where somebody blows a candle and a child happens to be lit on fire. Did he forget the facts in this case? Did he forget one important fact in this case? I'm going to go into the in loco parentis. Watch this. The charge in loco parentis, for those of you who are not familiar, the school is in the position of the parents. Let's be realistic, members of the jury, and let's focus on what really did happen here and what really did take place, and let's use the analogy that Mr. Mixon used. Yes, there's a birthday cake in the middle of the table, 16 candles on it, and kids sitting all around that. But the one thing that he left out was that a parent would now take a gallon jug of gasoline and look at the flames, see the warning on it, by the way, which says explosive caution, never use near an open flame, and start to pour over a table. He left that fact out. I could assure you the parents that are at the back of this courtroom, Alonso's parents, Yvonne and Claudio, if they knew that any parent in this world was going to take a gallon jug of gasoline and pour it across a birthday cake, I could tell you one thing they would have said, and that is no. No, no, no. It would not happen. And why wouldn't it happen? Because no parent would ever allow that to happen. These parents entrusted the life of their son to a teacher, to the Board of Education. They trusted him to take care of them as they would. Yet, this teacher comes in here and tells you, I treated these students like I would my own children. Really? You would actually bring in a gallon of gasoline and pour it against an open flame? Where in the world is that reasonable? Who in the world would say that that's reasonable? Why would anyone ever say that that is reasonable? It is completely unreasonable. So Alonso is burned, and he is burned severely. Look what happens to him. Alonso is burned so badly, and there is no fire blanket in that classroom to put out the flames. A teacher from another room has to run in, hears the commotion of all the kids screaming, and sees that a child is on fire in a classroom. This is an unbelievable story, but it's the reality. He then runs back to his classroom to get a fire blanket to extinguish the flames. And we learned something from the doctors in this case. 3 words. Time is tissue. As you continue to burn, the burns become deeper and deeper, and that's exactly what happened. They burned down through the epidermal layer, 1st degree, like a sunburn. Through the dermal layer, 2nd degree. 3rd degree, they burned down through the nerves and through the sweat glands. And now Alonso no longer has the ability to regulate temperature in his body because, as you know, every square inch of our body is covered by peripheral nerves. And they were burned off of his face, off of his neck and his arm. And that's what he's left with. So he can't even go out in the summertime because he can't regulate heat the way that all of us could. Is that fair for them to say this is a birthday party? Some birthday party. But one thing we know about Alonso hasn't attended any birthday parties since. He doesn't get invited to those parties. Alonso did something that was unusual. When he was actually extinguished, when they put the flames out, and he continued to burn through these chemical burns that he had. His teacher actually said to him, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." Do you remember what Alonso said to the teacher at that point? Now he's burned, his ears are melting off. He said, it's okay, Mrs. Poole. I'll be all right." He would not be all right. There is a statement from a very famous man. You might have heard this quotation before. And it says, the measure of a man, or a woman, the measure of a man is not how they react in times of comfort, but how they react in times of controversy and discomfort. Alonso Yanes has been burned, but he's offering comfort to his teacher. When he gets to the hospital and he's in critical condition, his father sees him, and his father actually tries to find his son, but he can't recognize him because his face has swelled up 3 times the amount of what it should be. 3 times the amount. Alonso hears his father and calls him Dad. And his father sees him, and you heard his father testify how his heart dropped when he saw his son. But then, Alonso, being the type of kid that he is, he said, "Dad, it's all right, I'll be all right." He would not be all right. He would never be all right. He was put in an induced coma where they actually started operating, and they removed all of the dead skin from his face and from his ears and from his neck, and they coated him with cadaver skin, and they put in staples, 2,000 staples. You remember what that looked like? Alonso being burned at that time. But afterwards, they had to do skin grafting. And you learn something that few of us had ever heard of, few of us would ever want to know, that they had to graft skin from the top of his head and the back of his head because it most nearly matches the color of the face. The skin on our body doesn't necessarily match the color of our face as well. So they took off all of the skin of his head. And look what he looks like. Look what they did to this poor young man. That's what happened to Alonso. Is that right? Is it ever right to have someone looking like that? Members of the jury, if you take a look at the religions in this world, and we take a look at the major religions, they talk about hell. And hell has one constant. And you know what the one constant is? Fire. That's what it is. And that's what happened to this young child. So when we take a look at what happened to him, and we see what happened to him, but move on to damages. What do we know about Alonso? I spoke to you in jury selection, and I asked you, regardless of race, religion, creed, color, sexual orientation, does everyone get a fair shake? And we spoke about this for quite a while. But the one thing I knew was coming in this case is the one thing that Alonso faces. When somebody has been disfigured, there is a prejudice that no one ever wants to talk about. This is the psychological injury that he has suffered, because he finds out about the parties that the other kids have had after they take place, not before. He is basically separated from his friends. He was a happy kid beforehand, but now he no longer has that ability to be part of the group, not by choice, but by 2 words, by carelessness and negligence on the part of the city of New York. Do you remember Harry Streep? Yeah, Merrill's brother, the vice principal who came in here, and I asked him, "Are you in charge of safety for the school?" "No, the principal is Miss Lacey. She's in charge, not the vice principal." And I asked Miss Lacey, the principal, "Who's in charge of safety?" "Oh, that's Harry Streep." They're doing this. They're both saying, "Not me. Don't look at me." So I asked him about the fume hoods. Just that one thing. Let's take that one item, the fume hoods, to remove fumes if you're doing a chemistry experiment. Tell me, Mr. Streep, were you aware that the fume hood wasn't working? It wasn't working in that classroom. Well, can we agree this experiment should have been done in a different classroom? His answer was, it wouldn't have made a difference. Wouldn't have made a difference? So I asked Mr. Streep, Are you telling us it wouldn't have made a difference to Alonso? Yes, it wouldn't have made a difference to Alonso. So I did something that many lawyers never want to do on cross-examination. I asked a why question. Why? Why wouldn't it have made a difference? And his answer floored me, and I imagine it did to you as well. And he said this, words I will never, ever forget. He said, none of the fumes hoods worked. None of them worked in any classroom. So then, of course, I'm going to continue to give me an answer like that. Well, for how long did you know that they didn't work? Well, since the school opened in 2004. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? That's what you allowed? This experiment never should have been done. Look what we have. Negligence, failing to have a fume hood that works. Negligence, failing to bring in fire blankets. Negligence, failing to have a shower that works. Negligence, failing to have operational wash stations. Yeah, they had goggles for one person in that classroom. Who wore the goggles? The teacher. But they really did have goggles for every other student. Now we're beyond negligence and carelessness. Now we're into recklessness. Because if you're going to conduct an experiment where you know that you don't even have working fume hoods, why in the world would you ever bring in fuel to an open flame in any classroom? This is a gross indifference to human life. This is beyond negligence. This is recklessness. Now, let's move on to damages. How do we assess what would be right for Alonso Yanes? I want to show you something. We cannot, and I'm going to break form for just a moment, we cannot use a per diem argument. You're aware of that. You can't say, what would something be worth day to day, and you multiply that by a number of years. That's improper. That will get you reversed. Don't do that. But what you can do is you could take chunks of time, and you could actually ask about that. That's very different than per diem. So think about it this way. Members of the jury, take the point in time from when Alonso is actually set on fire. He is burning. He's losing his ears. He's losing his face. He gets to the hospital. He's unrecognizable. They actually have to put him into an induced coma, pump him full of 38 pounds of fluid just for that period of time. I'm going to suggest a number for that period of time. Would $1 million be too little? Would it be too much? I think at least that amount for what happened in that short period of time, knowing that you're never going to recover from that. But then, after he comes out of the coma, to actually recognize that his face has cadaver skin on it, stapled with 2,000 staples, for that period of time, where he now has to go to the hydrotherapy unit to have portions of his body cut away, they call them debridements, each day where they remove a portion of his face, of his ears. If I said to you, for the 2 weeks after that, $10 million, would that be fair? Would that be reasonable? Certainly. And for the rest of that hospitalization for 2 months, knowing that he hasn't been able to even have a hug from his parents because he's in the Cornell burn unit, where they can't do this because they're worried about infection, something called flesh-eating bacteria, methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, which he did have, and they had to remove all of the skin grafts. Would another $10 million be reasonable for that period of time? But the worst is this. The worst is what he now faces going forward after the hospitalizations, when he goes back to school. We all know, common experience tells us, and don't we know this? Don't we know that children can be cruel? Don't we know that they can be mean? Haven't we seen this? He goes back to school the following year. He goes back in October. Halloween is coming up. And what do the kids say to him? Nice mask, Alonso. Through no fault of his own, he was injured. But this is what he has to deal with on a day-to-day basis. He cannot walk down the street now without somebody gasping when they look at him. He is the nicest kid. You heard him here. He was somebody who was trying to comfort others during his worst time. But this is what he must deal with now. This is his reality. So how do you compensate Alonso for 53 years into the future, which is what the judge will instruct as far as his life expectancy pursuant to the actuarial tables?